Talkin' Tuesday is back in your city. That is Bill Landis. I am Austin Ward. This is the Podcast Daily. Huge lineup back in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for practice number 6. We have tight ends coach for a Tuesday talking version, Keenan Bailey, and defensive line coach, Larry Johnson. And we were supposed to have a third member of the coaching staff, but I don't think he's going to make it. So it won't be a Tony Tuesday because he doesn't work here anymore.
Yeah, it would be something if Tony Alford showed up.
It's like, you know what, Jerry put me down. I'm going to hold myself to that accountability. Going to go down there, make an appearance, and explain my actions.
Like, before we get into the Talking Tuesday stuff, and I guess I run the risk of talking about this now and then something happening. Weird they don't have a running backs coach yet, right?
No, yeah, it's not been great.
Mildly concerning, I think.
Yeah. I've been of two minds of that, trying to remain rational about that process. I think what's happening is the candidate list is very clear. The timing is not ideal for anybody in that line of work to leave in March. Ohio State was left in a difficult position, a bit of a lurch, not just because they're in the middle of spring camp, but because everyone is in the middle of spring. And you get set, you put down payments on a house, you plan, make professional commitments to programs. Like, you might have a buyout that you can't escape easily. None of this stuff is simple. And so I can understand all of that. And usually assistant coaching hires, they don't just happen at the snap of the fingers. There was not another Chip Kelly situation out there for Ohio State. So this is assuming that nothing happened. Spoiler alert, this is Monday for Tuesday's episode. Assuming nothing happens after we leave Roosters on a Monday to get into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on Tuesday morning, it'll be 2 weeks, since it became clear that Tony Alford was leaving. That is not a extended timeline. That is not unusual for things to take that long or longer to go through a hiring process and complete the staff if you're doing interviews. It has been compounded, and I can understand the frustration. You go after Gillespie at Alabama, he has another raise, he's staying. DeMarco Murray, next on the list, he gets a raise to stay at Oklahoma. You go get pretty far down the road with Stan Drayton. You don't get the help that maybe you want from Temple with a buyout for a head coach that it doesn't seem like he's going to be there in the long term. You hope that would have worked out. Buyout timing situations with Curtis Looper as you move on to that. So when you add that up and you think, swinging missing 4 times, that seems like a lot. That also does happen even if it's January. Yeah. It can happen. So it's frustrating, but I don't know that it's cause for massive concern.
I think the only thing I would add to that is we're not in the situation where there are only 4 good running back coaches in college football. So I still think Ohio State can and likely will end up with a good one. But yeah, it seems like the process has been more difficult probably than initially imagined, and certainly some misses maybe not the right way to put it, but some high profile swings that didn't work out Ohio State's way. And frankly, I am on the side of Ohio State probably shouldn't be in the business of paying 7-figure buyouts to get a running backs coach. No offense to running back coaches out there, but I don't think that's the world you want to be living in if you're any program, let alone Ohio State. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know outside of a sitting head coach like Stan Drayton that it would approach that amount. But if you have any buyout, I think part of the complication is Ohio State has loosely allocated $1.6 million, let's say. Tony Alford had a 2-year deal at $800,000. If somebody has to pay some buyout, then that's going to decrease the salary that you can offer them. And then I can hear the counter argument, which I understand. It's well, why don't they just pay more? They can. You have the broadcast money coming in from Fox and CBS and NBC. If that's what it takes to get something done in March, do it. Get the guy you want. And I certainly don't think that that's a wrong opinion to have about it, but is that the precedent that you're going to set with the rest of the staff? What does that mean for your salary pool moving forward if that's the way that you have to do business? I can understand all of that, and that's why it's rational and irrational parts of your brain just fighting over how this should work. You're Ohio State, get whoever you want, and thinking, well, these are also human beings, and there's accountants and athletic departments and athletic directors and all these other people fighting over it. It's like you wind up in this spot where, in the grand scheme of things, they didn't get it done maybe in the timeline they wanted, but Ryan Day can continue to hold down the fort for another week or so. If this lasts another week and I don't have somebody by the time we get back for another Talking Tuesday, then I'll be like, something's really wrong now.
Yeah, and I think budgets exist for a reason. Certainly, a place like Ohio State should be willing to push past that budget when it makes sense, when it wants to be aggressive. I don't know, again, if running backs coach is the spot you want to do it with because of the potential ripple effect of doing so.
Yeah, I mean, we can't on one hand say this may be the most replaceable position. With all due respect, you want a good recruiter, understand that, but like day-to-day position coaching, development, fundamentals, technique, it might be the most straightforward position. Again, with all due respect to running backs coaches who are doing a job that I personally don't think I could do, even if I had Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson.
Yeah, I'd find a way to screw it up.
Yeah, I don't like. We wouldn't be doing that. So I understand that it is still, there are still skills involved that I don't possess, and the normal person may not possess either. But if that is the most replaceable spot in the mind of other people in the profession, you don't have to say $800,000, pony up an extra buyout. And I'm not just saying that to rationalize why it's taken 2 weeks. I think Ohio State expected that it would have already concluded this search, and maybe if it had been in January or December, it would have. But that wasn't the hand that it was dealt by Tony Alford. Mm-hmm. So this is why you're seeing it take the amount of time that it is, and maybe there'll be a resolution soon, or maybe Ryan Day will have to talk again unscheduled on Talking Tuesday because he's the running backs coach.
Oh, yeah, we should do that. Ryan Day is available. We can only ask him running backs questions. Yeah. I would do that.
Sign me up.
Yeah, sounds great.
Ask him.
That won't happen, though.
Oh.
We're gonna talk to Keenan Bailey and James Harnitis, right? No,
I thought it was Larry Johnson.
Larry Johnson. Sorry, it's Larry Johnson.
We're going to talk to somebody.
Correct. We're going to talk to Ohio State football coaches. No, you're right. Yeah, it's Larry and Keenan, because those are they're the opposites on the other side of the ball, tight ends and defensive lines.
Yeah, got to match them up.
That's right.
Can't have Justin Fry too soon.
No, you can't. He's got enough things to work through. I'd rather talk to Justin Fry later in the spring, actually, because I think last year we talked to him like very early on with all these questions about the offensive line, and then we didn't talk to him again until May.
Yeah, and he's like, we don't know. Yeah, we haven't had pads on yet.
We haven't had pads on yet. It's like, okay, well, let's wait till you get pads on. So that's good. There's still interesting stuff to talk about with both of those guys. I know we had a decent tight end discussion on Monday's daily, so I will try not to repeat some of those points. But I'm like pretty interested in where Bennett Christian is with Keenan Bailey. Obviously, like a weird situation last year with his suspension for the what do we call
performance enhancing drugs?
Yeah, the PED suspension. But like he was still able to practice, right? Like he didn't play in games, but like Monday through Friday he was an Ohio State football player, and like that's still an opportunity for him to get better. And I'm just like kind of wondering how he came out of that. Like if we're not talking with Bennett himself, but like I wonder if he feels like he maximized that time, if Keenan feels like he maximized that time, whether or not there's an opportunity here for a guy like that who was, wasn't a 5-star tight end, but he was a fairly well-regarded prospect coming out of high school for the position, and there's an opening there for somebody to take it. It doesn't, I guess at this moment, feel like Will Kacmarek has necessarily done that. Maybe we shouldn't have expected him to. So there's just like there's a little bit of space there, I think, for Bennett Christian to maybe make a move if he's continued to develop the way that he should have over the course of last season, even though he wasn't playing. So I'm oddly intrigued by a guy who might end up being like the 4th tight end on the roster.
I mean, if we're talking to the tight ends coach about that, we should be getting down to what the depth looks like and what a realistic ceiling or potential is for somebody like Bennett Christian and his skill set. Like, we've seen Ohio State teams use that 3rd and 4th tight end in the past, and if the role is for him that he's going to play something similar to what Jake Hausman provided, that's fine. Like, Ohio State was glad that it had a pure blocker that it could count on in situations where it needed to. Like, I don't mean to set a bar high or low in any particular situation for Bennett Christian, but like Jake Hausman got on the field and contributed. I think he scored 1 touchdown in a short yardage situation. Like, you needed somebody to go out and just do some dirty work. Maybe Bennett Christian can fill that role. I don't know. I'd like to know what that means for the rest of them, because Johnny Thurman's development, I think, is going to be a pretty hot topic what will Kazmarik's transition from the Ohio University to Ohio State University, like what that looks like, how long they think it will take, maybe before if he's struggling to get his cleats under him at this point, which I'm not going to put any words in Keenan Bailey's mouth. It just seems like that might be the case of the way that we're talking about G. Scott sort of leading that group right now. Like, there is a lot of built-in intrigue into that depth chart as a whole. So for you to start it with Ben Christian, like, it's totally fair. Like, you want to find some way with 1 through 4. I mean, how can you rule him out of that conversation?
Yeah, you can't. And I also think, like, if Keenan Bailey, like what you shared the other day, like, is not super enthusiastic about where they are right now, it doesn't mean they can't eventually get there. But also it is, I think, rather easily explained why they wouldn't be there, right? Like it seems like G. Scott actually is, based on what Ryan Day said about him. But it's like, if Will Kazmarek, an up transfer from the MAC, is not quite ready, and Bennett Christian, who didn't play at all last year, is not quite ready, and Jelani Thurman, who's a true sophomore who played like 20 snaps last year, is not quite ready 3 practices into spring, it's like, okay, like, let's talk after the 15th, and then we'll see where we're at, and then we'll talk about it in the summer. Like, it is, of course, a developmental position.
That's what I was going to say. Something developmental position.
Yeah. So, like, I don't. Yes, you would love for everybody to be rocking and rolling day 1 of spring practice. That's not reality. It's probably even harder for it to be reality at a position like tight end. I mean, like, tight end, offensive line are probably the 2 spots where that's most difficult. So I think they can certainly be okay. And it's also weird that they only have like 4 now. And there's 2 more coming in the summer, and true freshmen, Max LeBlanc and Demarion Witten. Like, and do I expect them to play? No, but it's like more bodies, more competition. I think brings out the best in everybody. So you'll have that dynamic too. But they are kind of like in a weird spot. But if Keenan is feeling like he needs to see more, just sort of generally, I would like to maybe get at what exactly he is looking for. What he highlighted is like the areas that they need to be improved upon coming into the spring, and how close or far away they are to actually, getting to that point.
Yeah, it's wild because I remember going to the coaches clinic last spring, and I was over there by the tight ends, as I'm prone to do from time to time. It's like, well, we're going to get 13 personnel involved. Oh, really?
Ooh.
That's the versatility and the depth that you have. Like, now it's like, can you play 2? Who would be the second? Like, I don't know what's it look like right now, and they don't have to figure that out right now. As you said, Bill, there's plenty of time for them to do so. And when you lay it out in those terms about true sophomore guy in the MAC last year, it is well worth that reminder that not everything has to be sorted out after the 1/3 of a spring camp. Like, there's still a full summer ahead of these guys, a full training camp where they'll have twice as many practices. I don't think that there's a lack of ability or size, speed, skill, any of that stuff in that room. It's just a lot more inexperienced. And I would even include G. Scott in that, based on the workload he's had in his career, and some of it, like, not being true all around, is like almost gadget tight end stuff in some respects, and taking advantage of his receiving skills. Like, in terms of being a all-around, every-down tight end, he's not been that in his career. So that's the part that's unusual for Ohio State, because you look back over the last decade, they've not really been in that spot. You've seen a succession plan, a veteran and a younger guy, and then you pass the torch to them next, and that's been a little bit disrupted for this particular group. And as you said, just with the numbers, it just feels a little light. Without knowing for sure that where that production is coming from, that part is odd, and we're, of course, going to fixate on stuff like that in spring, because that's the whole point of covering this team.
Right. And I don't know, like, I almost hesitate to say this because I know that it, like, automatically sets off alarm bells. Like, I think there's like a non-zero chance that they come out of spring thinking they might want to add somebody if the right guy becomes available. If anything, just to get some more experience in the room. But I still think we're probably a ways off from that. Like, they have the scrimmage coming this weekend that we'll be at, Student Appreciation Day, and then probably a much more substantial, important scrimmage the week after that, the weekend before the spring game. Maybe like after that, I would like to find a way to get a temperature check on where the tight end position is before I, say too much about potentially adding a transfer. But there aren't many spots on this roster where you'd even consider it. Offensive line, certainly, and tight end probably the only other one. And who knows if they actually get to that point.
They definitely don't need to do that on the defensive line.
No, they look pretty good there. I'm excited to talk with Larry about that. I'm hoping that he's willing to expound a little bit on. I think like mostly where that second group of tackles is, but I'm like very interested in Kenyatta Jackson too. But like I thought Ryan Day's talking points about Kenyatta last week were interesting about. Everyone sees the talent, but we believe in Kenyatta. We gotta like get him to believe in himself, which I thought was like, oh, that's. How can I get it? Like a young player who's probably not playing as much might at times have a crisis of confidence. I think that's probably pretty natural. But do they see signs of Kenyatta like breaking through that at all? Because I think it would mean a heck of a lot to this defense if they can get to a place where Jack and JT don't have to play like basically every single high leverage snap, right? I think you want to feel confident that you can throw Kenyatta and Caden Curry out there, and maybe there's some drop off because Jack and JT are really good and seemingly getting better, but can they go out there and impact a game in a way that you'd expect an Ohio State defensive end to do? I think that both guys should be at this point in their career, going into their third season. Whether or not Larry like thinks they're there, I'm not entirely sure. So I'm hopeful to get some answers on that.
It is worth monitoring with Kenyatta Jackson for a variety of reasons. I think you can see NFL potential in this guy and disruptive, but it's different. It is longer, leaner, like more traditional, pure edge rushing, get after the quarterback stuff that we've talked in the past. Like Jack and JT seem like they're of a more similar mold, and they're so good against the run. Jack took the next step late last year in terms of quarterback pressures and sacks and productivity there. It's like they're stockier built. They're not designed in the lab that created a Bosa or a Chase Young. And Kenyatta Jackson looks like that. And we've seen practices and flashes that suggest he can become that as he continues to fill out. And physically, you just look at him in a practice setting, it's like he should be the best one out there. Or that has the chance to become
first off the bus kind of guy.
First off the bus guy. And, the fact that it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean anything. That happens for a lot of guys. 2 years, 3 years, the timeline is not the same for everyone. And if you have an opportunity to rotate on the defensive end and not force JT and Jack to play every single – I was never suggesting every snap at Notre Dame had to happen. Didn't – but they were still productive. I will say they still made the plays that they had to in the fourth quarter, but that's neither here nor there. But if the strength for both of those guys is really just being so solid, setting an edge and stopping the run, and then you can occasionally supplement that with Kenyatta Jackson's speed off the edge, that's a huge bonus for Ohio State. And if he becomes that third, I wonder what that means and what spot they can carve out for Caden Curry, because we've all seen every time he's been given an opportunity in a game, the motor just wows people, and that he can impact it. But if he's the fourth one, which he may well be based on Kenyatta Jackson's development, like how does he fit into that picture? Because you're still trying to figure out what to do even with those guys at tackle too, and if it's a rushman package, are you taking one of them off to get Caden or Jack in a spot like that? Like it's hard for me to figure out where they are in a plan, because there has been some shift towards best players have to be on the field in the most meaningful situations, while also knowing that they're going to play 14-plus games. Yeah, which I understand you're not going to have JT and Jack play 900 snaps next year.
I would hope not. That would be a heck of a feat if they're both able to pull it off and be consistent throughout the year. I also just kind of like you sort of touched on it there. Like you got like different flavors of pass rusher. Like why not confuse the heck out of whichever tackles you're playing that week by making them face the strength of a JT and Jack, and then you hit them with the speed of Kenyatta. Or like I'd imagine Caden Curry is incredibly annoying to try to block. Or even like I don't know. Like we talk about Mitchell Melton most off seasons, and like nothing really ever materializes for him. But I have felt like the last couple of years when he's gotten into games, granted against backups, like he's flashed a little bit as a pass rusher. Like can he give you even 4 or 5 snaps a game, like of meaningful reps before it's in garbage time to throw a different guy out there? And obviously you expand that to like, the Arvell Reeses of the world, guys who aren't necessarily in the defensive line room. But it really does feel like as long as everyone's developing the way that they should, and by that I mostly mean the guys behind Jack and JT, you could have a situation where you're really coming at offenses in waves with what you have up front. And I know, like you said, there's always a balance there between like how much do you do that, how much do you play your guys, and they need to find that. I thought they overcorrected last year, mostly okay, but I thought there were moments where it did show up, and they need to expand it. I think a little bit, provided they have guys that show that they can do it.
Yeah, again, that's a matter of one of the luxury problems that Ohio State has. Oh, they have too many good defensive ends. Like, how do you want to manage them? How many reps is the right amount? And that will be an interesting conversation in some ways. It's not Larry's favorite, and I'm tired. Everyone's tired of having it and hearing it. But he did talk about it more openly last year, like showing some willingness to change and like wanting, if Jack and JT had earned the right to be in those high leverage situations, and that they should be out there no matter what. Like, I thought that was, for me, encouraging, because I had also been talking about it for several years. So I got a chance to stop. And now if there's a different balance that has to be struck, I think Larry's probably more open to having that conversation. And if it means that he's playing 4 again, I think he would absolutely love to do that. He's definitely not going to have a problem or an unwillingness to do that. And then that same situation then will bleed over to defensive tackle, where, I mean, that conversation may well be more than 4 bodies based on what's going on right now with the younger guys pushing up there.
It could be, yeah. I could see maybe 5. Maybe 6. I don't know. It would depend on like Hero Canu's going to play. I think, right? Seems like Caden McDonald's going to play, and then it's like Jason Moore. Are you ready? And then like Will Smith, I think is really interesting. You look at him in the group of tackles at practice, and he looks like a little undersized, which is easy to do when you're like next to Caden McDonald and Tyleek Williams. In fairness, but he looks quick to me too. Like I don't know. I've said this before, but like whenever a guy does what Will did, like to get himself ready to play at Ohio State, I always like kind of keep that in the back of my mind when there were questions about whether or not he should have been taken in the first place. And then he kind of answered them with the way that he played, with the way that he developed himself before he ever got to. He was always in Columbus before he got to Ohio State. Yep. I think that means something, and now he's seemingly healthy enough to do something with that. So we've not talked with Larry probably like really at all about Will, because he was just kind of out of sight, out of mind for much of last year. Even as he early enrolled, like it was like from the second he got to Ohio State, he just wasn't really doing anything for all of last year. So that's the guy. I think like he and Jason Moore, I guess, are probably the two that it's like, is this a defensive tackle rotation? Maybe like almost unlike what we've seen here before, because I don't think we've ever seen it really go past 4, right? But it does seem like there's the potential for it to do that if those two guys in particular make a little bit of a push here.
Yeah, and then there's the Tywone Malone factor.
Always forget about it.
Getting a full winter, getting the spring, different situation for him, and putting baseball in the past. What does Larry Johnson see as the path forward for him? What did he notice last year? I think we felt like, I know I did, during training camp, you just watched him. It was like, looks like he's ready. And Tyleek was dealing with the injury on that first practice of camp. It's like, opportunity could be right there for Tywone Malone, and it didn't happen for him. And maybe it was unfair to suggest that it could. Different system, different responsibilities, playing closer to the ball, or whatever, however you want to view that, from Ole Miss to Ohio State, different techniques, I thought we'd see a lot more of that athleticism and get him into the rotation to play for Ohio State more last year, and it didn't happen. But that's not a reason that it can't happen moving forward. I think that when he chose Ohio State with the second chance on that recruitment, it was an understanding that putting one thing in the past and fully committing to a process that may not happen immediately. And what did the winter provide for him? What had 5 practices done for him at defensive tackle? It's going to be difficult. As we said, we've named 7 guys.
Yeah,
they can't all play. That you want to have as much depth as possible, especially on the defensive line. It's difficult to survive in the trenches and make it through as many games as Ohio State's going to play. But you're not going to rotate 7 people at defensive tackle. That's just not.
Seems unlikely. Yeah. I feel like the more and more we have conversations about the defensive side of the ball, we're going to get to the point by the end of the spring where like 42 guys need to play. I don't find space for them. I don't know how you're going to do it, but they all need to play.
We've we're pretty far down that road already. I mean,
so.
and that's what I think. Big picture, zooming out, it's the hardest thing to comprehend about Ohio State's defense. Like, just who's going to do it, because they can literally do anything they want, and they can design the number one defense in the country around it.
Yeah.
But there is the danger of trying to over-rotate and losing some of that high-end potential and consistency and repetition and understanding of what you have to do on a play-in, play-out basis. Like, I guess to boil it down, it's like, don't get too cute.
Yeah, no, I think you run that risk. I think, and I got the sense from Jim Knowles, like talking to him a couple weeks ago, that he's trying to check himself on that. I'm hopefully we should talk to him again, I guess, at some point this spring. I hope we do to ask more about it, because I think it's like it's a luxury, right? You're at least you're approaching it from the standpoint of it being a luxury, but it's like you have a ton of guys who can do a lot of different things, and you can really go crazy with wanting to do a whole lot of stuff. But like, is that in the service of the best possible Ohio State defense? And the answer is probably no. So you got to find of that, vast smorgasbord of defense that you could pull from. Like, what are the few things that make the most sense that keep you as a sound defense, I think, more than anything else.
I was thinking about that a couple minutes ago. It was like Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, those conversations, like when Jack could kick down a 3 technique, like does the Rushman package still exist in Larry's mind? How much does he want to use it? We didn't see it a ton, just a small sampling of that last year. That's an example of me walking down the same road that the coaching staff would. It's like, well, why aren't you doing the Rushman package anymore? Like, no one can stop it, and you have more pass rushers than anybody else could possibly want. And like, Jack would be a matchup nightmare. Caden Curry's a matchup nightmare in there. Like, would Tyleek Williams stay in that package for you, or somebody else that you think could be the next pass rusher? And it's like, I'm guilty of that just as much as anybody.
Well, it's fun. That's what spring's for, I guess. Like, that's all we can do, right? They're not playing games. All we can do is like imagine different ways that this roster could be deployed, and then trust and hope that they do it the right way, I guess.
I know. That's what March is for. I keep getting those reminders from Ohio State's coaching staff to just tap the brakes, but I don't want to. We only have 15.
He wants to play Akron tomorrow.
I want games. There's only 10 more practices in spring, and then we have to go through 3.5 months of desert off season.
I'm sure there'll be things to talk about.
Yeah, maybe you're right. We'll find ways to keep it going with Talking Tuesday and everything else on the podcast daily. We'll have coverage from the Woody Hayes Athletic Center later on after we hear from Larry Johnson and Keenan Bailey as the Buckeyes practice for the 6th time in spring. Thanks for joining us on the Daily. He's Bill Landis. I'm Austin Ward. We will talk to you all later.